those are the challenges. What about the expectations?
So alternative dispute resolution by using arbitration platform or using mediation is a common platform that can be utilized in ASEAN countries with a different legal background. So that could be a common language.
Yeah.
And when you talk about the focus is to settle business dispute or international commercial dispute, arbitration is something, or the alternate dispute resolution is something that all the ASEAN countries can utilize because it's a tool that you utilize.
Menteri Hukum Malaysia Azalina Othman Said berkunjung ke Jakarta pada 8 hingga 9 Mei dalam rangka lawatannya di ASEAN. Selama berada di Jakarta, ia bertemu dengan Menteri Hukum Republik Indonesia membicarakan peningkatan kerjasama di bidang hukum. Halo pemirsa, selamat datang di International Corner Antara bersama saya Gracia Simanjuntak. Pada episode kali ini, International Corner akan bercakap-cakap dengan Menteri Hukum Malaysia. Minister, welcome to Jakarta. How are you, man?
Thank you so much, Gracia, for allowing me to be on your show. I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak with me today.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, let's get started. As ASEAN Chair 2025, what impetus does Malaysia want to strengthen for the establishment of regional legal frameworks, including on international arbitration and cross-border insolvency?
Well, to be very honest, Gracia, when you talk about the ASEAN member states, one of the most obvious relationship that is a common measurement when you speak of ASEAN would be the business perspective. If you talk about social or political, tend to be extremely quite challenging because of the different background. But for businesses, this is something that the ASEAN member state can speak together in one voice. And you also cannot deny that one of the challenges of business is everyone in the business world do want to make a profit. And when it comes to making a profit, the challenge, whether you like it or not, would always be the premise of when you're not satisfied with the contract or the outcome of the business, what do you do? Where do you go? And if you're talking about different jurisdiction, one of the, as I mentioned, the common measurement would be looking to the alternate dispute resolution.
Yeah, true.
And for Malaysia, we are considered one of the most leading voices in ASEAN when you talk about the commercial arbitration platform, besides in Singapore. So in the ASEAN Law Forum that Malaysia will be hosting in August of the 19th, 20th and 21st of 2025, the objective is to focus in reference from the element of the business perspective, communicating from the voice of the legal framework. And I personally believe if you look at other countries that has always a member state, for example, like the European Union, most of the common aspect of them communicating has always been from the business sector, and most of the laws that they commonly have in EU are laws affecting businesses. That would be the trigger point of the relationship of the European countries. So they speak in one voice when it comes to the issue of business development, legal business. So this is something that for Malaysia, chairing the ASEAN for 2025, is to trigger this element of the legal aspect of it from the more to look into the business law. Everyone, when they mention about ASEAN countries, you know very well with the different background, different political history, political journey, you cannot deny that even the judicial system is different. For example, Malaysia and Singapore is extremely British-centric. It's a common law system.
Right.
But if you look at Philippines, or you look at even Indonesia, Cambodia and Vietnam, even Thailand, it's a very civil law based system. So even though the legal system or the entry point of the legal system is different, but some of the values are always almost the same. One of the most important element of every civilized nation is when you talk about legal rights, you cannot deny the element of due process. Natural justice, the right to be heard. You also cannot deny certain element of accessibility to justice. So this is something in all ASEAN countries. You talk about developed countries or developing countries would pursue the same values. So although the system is different, common law, civil law, taking into account the values are the same, business or from the legal framework is a fantastic platform to start with. And that's why I'm here, meeting the law minister in Indonesia.
So those are the challenges. What about the expectations?
I think one of the, I always see the expectation would also be the challenges. Because I believe that the biggest challenge of any country, even though however big or small of that country, even in your own country, like in Indonesia itself, or even in Malaysia, or any country, one of the biggest challenges is you can have the best law in the world, but the implementation of such laws. What more is when you look at ASEAN with the multiple different background of civil law and common law, of course, implementation will always be a problem. But the key to that solution, I always believe, is ADR, alternate dispute resolution. And alternate dispute resolution, and you have adjudication, arbitration, and you also have mediation. Like when I spoke to the minister earlier today, he himself recognized that not necessarily going to court to settle dispute should be the first choice. In most civilized nations, one of the best way to settle any dispute and to get a very fast outcome definitely is the requirement of using alternate dispute resolution, which is using the arbitration platform, using the mediation platform. So because the court of the ASEAN countries, common law, civil law, has different court function. The common law system is adversarial, whereby you have the plaintiff, the defendant, the prosecutor, the defendant. But when you have the civil law system, which is more inquisitorial, the judiciary play more position or the role of trying to explore the element of justice. So that's why it's called inquisitorial, which is a civil law system. So the court plays a more aggressive role as compared to the adversarial system, which is the common law system. So that is a court system which is totally different because of our, as in most of the ASEAN countries, are countries that has been colonized by foreign powers. So the colonization brings in those values of those. Singapore and Malaysia being colonized by the British, so it's the British common law system. Whereas the Philippines or Indonesia is being colonized by different European countries with a different system that they are applying when it comes to the country being independent. So alternate dispute resolution by using arbitration platform or using mediation is a common platform that can be utilized in ASEAN countries with a different legal background. So that could be a common language. And when you talk about the focus is to settle business dispute or international commercial dispute, arbitration is something, or the alternate dispute resolution is something that all the ASEAN countries can utilize because it's a tool that you utilize.
Are you saying this is not something new?
No, this has been going on for most countries. They do that, but it depends how aggressive is the country to utilize. In some countries, they see one of the biggest secret of getting more investors to come to any country is for them to have the faith that the judicial system is transparent, accountability, and full of fairness. So you can't be investing in a business of a country. You're a foreign company. You invest in a foreign country, and you're not comfortable with the judicial system. Nobody wants to invest in that country because you don't want a kangaroo court. You want the court to be fair, and you want that you are able to defend yourself. So that's why a country that is democratic, the country that doesn't have corruption, transparent, accountable, are countries that business people or big, huge international companies are comfortable to invest. it's not just about making profit. It's about when there's a problem, where do you go? So of course, most court in most countries, and they have been independent, they'll say that, well, our system is of course transparent and accountable. But one of the biggest challenge of any court in any part of any country is the timing itself. Because court is usually considered not so expensive, but lawyers are expensive. And sometimes court will have a situation of so much cases in a day, so cases get postponed. And business people don't like postponement. They like to settle the dispute fast because they have to carry on with the business. So alternate dispute resolution, education, arbitration, mediation is a good alternative for most businesses. So I believe the ASEAN Law Forum that Malaysia is hosting, and most of the law ministers in ASEAN will attend, and also the ASEAN Secretariat will participate. The objective is to have more dialogue and conversation in reference to this element of finding a legal framework from the business perspective.
Speaking of ASEAN Law Forum 2025, specifically, what will Malaysia promote during that forum, which will take place in August in Kuala Lumpur?
Of course, one would be in reference to the commercial arbitration platform. The other one, I believe, is that we are also looking, as I spoke to the minister, your minister earlier today, we are also looking to cross-border insolvency. Cross-border insolvency is something that most countries are working towards it. And I believe that Indonesia is also quite keen on cross-border insolvency. Let's talk into subjects of online harms, for example. There's a lot of online frauds.
Right.
You have cybercrime or commercial crime.
Online scams.
Scams. This is something that the discussion can be looked into. But I think for the ASEAN Law Forum, our objective has definitely be more towards the platform of the commercial arbitration. And just now when I spoke to your minister, he's also talking about the usage of technology or AI. For Malaysia, we're also having such conversation in reference to using of artificial intelligence, in reference especially towards the usage of the premise of access to justice. One of the things that I find that's quite interesting when you look at the ASEAN
Law Forum,
I believe that the ASEAN Legal Forum can move towards the agenda of a legal collaboration. I'm quite keen on that, and I think it can be done because of the, as I mentioned earlier in my opening statement to you, is that the dispute resolution or the alternate dispute resolution is considered something that is a common banner in most ASEAN countries. So this is something that can be done with most ASEAN countries. I believe that the legal cooperation between the ASEAN member state will create more better relationship among ASEAN countries. And I also personally see that the regional economic interest is able to develop more when you have a proper legal framework that will give a conclusion of legal certainty and stability. As I gave you the analogy about most companies from outside the ASEAN region would want to be comfortable in reference to the legal framework that's being offered to investors.
All right, we'll see you back in the second segment, Minister.
Thank you.
Terima kasih pemirsa, demikian perbincangan saya dengan Menteri Hukum Malaysia. Sampai jumpa di segmen berikutnya. So, what is needed to build such an ecosystem, and so that it can protect economic or regional economic interest and supply chains?
To be honest, one of the challenges that I see in reference to any legal framework or any framework when it comes to the region, for the region, is there must be a very sincere and strong commitment to make sure that the intention is implemented. I believe for ASEAN to really succeed, especially from the legal framework, is that commitment of the country to endorse and accept that implementation and that application to apply. The same in most countries. For example, subject that can be applied, for example, issues on cross-border insolvency that I mentioned to you earlier. That is one element that can be utilized in a very similar framework.
Halo pemirsa, Anda kembali menyaksikan International Corner bersama dengan Menteri Hukum Malaysia, Her Excellency Azalina Othman Said. Minister, during this visit, you will also talk about collaborative efforts to build an integrated legal ecosystem. So, what is needed to build such an ecosystem, and so that it can protect economic or regional economic interest and supply chains?
To be honest, one of the challenges that I see in reference to any legal framework or any framework when it comes to the region, for the region, is there must be a very sincere and strong commitment to make sure that the intention is implemented. Of course, because of how politics in most countries in the region, with the election coming, change of government, there's a lot of dependency on the government ministry or the government agency to make sure whatever policy that's been decided by the minister or the government for the day gets implemented. But for the ASEAN region, I believe that the ASEAN member state would have no choice except that if they would believe that their commitment, say for example in reference to issues on business legal framework, their commitment that this is something that will, if it's been implemented or enforced, their country will benefit first. Even though ASEAN is in reference to like a caucus group whereby it's countries are working together with similar ideals and objectives, but the beneficiaries definitely be the country itself. So what ASEAN is doing is what most EU countries are doing. If you look at most of the EU countries with a different background, different languages, what is similar is that they believe that by working together as a bloc, they are able to come up with better implementation or better outcome from the perspective of doing businesses in EU would really benefit everyone. So like this is my personal view, is that when Britain left EU because of Brexit, the economy in Britain has gone down. When they were in part of EU, they benefited a lot. Why? For example, the movement of manpower. You don't have to go to immigration and chop your passport every time you go to France or to go to Paris and you go to London.
That's very
and then you have the transport system. So that makes business more convenient.
Right, integrated.
So of course, although each of the country in EU, I always use EU as an example for ASEAN, is because those countries have got different history, different legal system, different civilization, different rule of law, different politics, but they speak in the same language when it comes to business. So they make laws that is where the EU will come up with one common law, and most of their countries will adapt that law. So this is something that for me, I wish for ASEAN when we have this ASEAN Law Forum. I believe for ASEAN to really succeed, especially from the legal framework, is that commitment of the country to endorse and accept that implementation and that application to apply. The same in most countries. For example, subject that can be applied, for example, issues on cross-border insolvency that I mentioned to you earlier. That is one element that can be utilized in a very similar framework. Because you talk about insolvency, winding up company, you talk about people who are bankrupt. All ASEAN countries do have the same challenges in those element of the legal interpretation of such laws. You talk about online harms, I mentioned earlier. You talk about online fraud. You talk about financial scammers. It applies the same in most ASEAN countries. Because when people scam, they don't care where you're from. Scamming is considered very international now. For example, issues on money laundering. So
Common
issue.
challenge.
So it's a common factor. So for rather than this country, that country, another country try to enact your own law, why don't you adopt the laws that is enacted by one country? For example, in Malaysia, because Singapore and Malaysia is quite similar from the legal system, we in Malaysia studying laws that is common to Malaysia from other countries that's been with the same system. Like in China, which is very progressive, we may not be the same with China, but we can look into the laws in Hong Kong because Hong Kong was also being colonized by the British. We look into Australia, New Zealand. So those are countries that is similar, even Canada. So this is why I'm saying is that for every country to go forward and to move in a very fast pace, you have to adapt. And the other challenges that I always see in not only from the legal framework is that yes, I admit the problem of implementing. We don't want a situation whereby the politicians have a commitment, but the government agency doesn't bite on that kind of commitment. Is the other issue that I face today with reference to huge usage on technology and social media. Things are moving very fast. So every country, if they have to deliver, they have to deliver it very fast. You cannot be waiting because everything's changing in split seconds. You can look at a lot of things. You talk about simple things on merchandising, it's everywhere. So the world is getting smaller and the world is becoming more borderless. So how does a country survive? So you can't move on your own. You have to move in a block. So being part of ASEAN would definitely benefit its member state. And of course, the experience of one country to the next country is also something that the ASEAN member states should also follow. If the thing is good, why not? So as I was having a conversation with your law minister, the Indonesian law minister, is of course I also want to learn from Indonesia as what Indonesia also wants to learn from Malaysia. That's why we are neighbours. So we cannot be in competition. Of course, you're in competition for SEA Games, you're in competition for sports, Olympic, which is sports. But when it comes to laws, legal application, the experiences is something that you should be working together. And we hope from the ASEAN Law Forum, we can have continuous dialogue and discussion in reference to working together.
From a legal perspective, Minister, how does U.S. tariff policy impact international trade law? How does it impact, specifically, how does it impact ASEAN countries?
Well, I don't know. I honestly can't comment because it's not in my jurisdiction. I have my personal view, but it would be suicidal if I have an opinion here. But of course, I believe that in any, being a lawyer with my background, not as a politician, but being a lawyer first. I always believe that if you want to increase any tariff, in my perspective, if you want to increase, it must be something that is considered agreed by both parties. You can't have a unilateral increment because you have to have because import-export is two countries. You don't import-export on your own. You need someone to import-export. So you have to have that conversation. So that conversation is to agree on a number or a percentage. That's what I think. If you announce, then you have the conversation. It doesn't look as if you have the intention to have that conversation. So the reason, like when I mentioned about alternate dispute resolution, why for me personally, I believe that it's a very important mechanism to settle dispute in a very fast pace, is because both parties have to agree on the arbitrator to appoint. Both parties have to agree on the mediator that you appoint. So these are things that can quickly settle, because if you and I agree on a third party to settle our dispute, we will settle this dispute. So you can't settle dispute when you're on your own. So disputes have to be settled because it's a dispute. So the same thing about the tariff. I always believe that it would be much better if the conversation was before the announcement rather than having a conversation after the announcement. But this is my personal view, because I'm not a trade minister or foreign minister. I'm just a law minister.
Last question, Minister. Amid increasing cybercrime and online scams, what kind of regional cooperation is needed to ensure online safety? And are there any regional mechanisms currently used within the ASEAN region to address online safety issues?
I think my immediate answer would be a lot of countries in ASEAN, the member state, do recognize that online harms is a challenging problem. And of course, everybody who knows the capacity of social media becoming a threat, especially when it comes to offences against children, online offences, elements of grooming, pornography, and now you have also AI pornography, whereby some people out there, the perpetrators, use AI as a mechanism to capture interest and to develop certain offences. So even while discussing with your minister earlier today, it was also part of the conversation. And I know that the countries in ASEAN, when it comes to online safety, must speak in one voice. Because you must understand, the biggest challenge is the fact that the application of the platform providers are the one that's making money. So the more interest you have, the more query you have, as you like a clickbait, you know, if you allow the perpetrators to have their free day, different countries have different laws, then they will be jumping jurisdiction, because technology is something which is borderless, right? You can be stationed in Malaysia and you're doing the offences outside Malaysia, or vice versa. So that's why if you have the law, which is quite similar, as one of the premise to fight, is one way to prevent. The other thing is, I think ASEAN countries should have one voice when it comes to platform providers that's abusing. You know, like in Australia, they have made it very clear that children below a certain age cannot access social media. I don't know whether Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos or Vietnam is willing to say that, look, enough is enough. We also want to have something similar. It would be a huge challenge. So I believe that to fight online harms is, of course, the first important thing is to create awareness among the younger generation, especially children, especially working together in schools, in universities. You have to start them young to understand. But again, for so many years ago, if you look, one of the biggest platforms for sexual predators is always, their platform is always in ASEAN countries. And this is when physical perpetrators or grooming, because they believe that this is something they can get away. And in Malaysia, we went very hard. We have sexual offences against children. Now we have the online harms. It's because we had one particular chap who came down to Malaysia under the disguise of being an NGO, and he was working in certain organisation. He was grooming children, boys and girls. So that, you know, the government realizes that, you know, there must be a very strict law. And one of the most important thing about having law when it affects children is the element of non-underreporting. So if you're a neighbour or a teacher or a family member and you suspect and you don't report, you should also be charged. Because children would not sometimes not have the courage to stand up and make a report. So if all the countries in ASEAN have got similar laws from a different perspective, but more similar than not similar, I believe that would be a step to really give a message that enough is enough and no is no.
Yeah, I agree. Minister Azalina, your time and insights during our discussion were invaluable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. Demikian pemirsa perbincangan saya dengan Menteri Hukum Malaysia, Azalina Othman Said. Terima kasih telah menyaksikan International Corner. Sampai jumpa di episode berikutnya. Thank you so much.
Thank you.